What are my favourites of 2022? Hi everybody, and welcome to this video. And for the first time I'm doing an end of year favourites video. Never got round to doing anything like this before, but I thought I'd give it a go. I'm not doing a top 10 albums of or anything like that. I'm just going to give you my one favourite in a few categories, and I hope you find it interesting. So we shall start with music, and we'll start with my favourite reissue of the year. Bearing in mind that some of the stuff that's come out more recently, most notably the Bowie Divine Symmetry box set, I haven't listened to yet. So whilst that looks excellent, I can't comment until I have actually heard it. But my favourite reissue of the year is actually quite a basic reissue. In fact, it's a really basic reissue, really. It's just the original album, but a particular version of it. But the reason it is my favourite reissue of the year should be obvious to anybody who watches my channel regularly, because it is my favourite album of all time. And for a long time it looked like we would never get it reissued on vinyl, and then all of a sudden everything fell into place, and for Record Store Day this year we had a reissue of The Gold Experience by the artist then known as that, but more commonly known as Prince. As I say, this is my all-time favourite album. They reissued it as a copy of the original promo release in this more basic sleeve with stickers, and it comes on transparent gold vinyl, different variants depending on whether you're in Europe or the US. This is the US version. The UK one, which I didn't get down, or UK and Europe one, was actually on a not particularly translucent marbled orangey vinyl, which is very nice as well, but less faithful to the original. But yeah, just as I say, because it's my favourite album of all time anyway, and that for years it never looked like we'd get this, my favourite reissue of the year is The Gold Experience by Prince. My favourite song of the year was a no-brainer. It's a song that has been stuck in my brain ever since I first heard it. It made me seek out this band, with the added bonus of the fact that they're a local band. They're from the Isle of Wight. That's giving it away to most of you. Which is literally, I can see the Isle of Wight from the end of my road. It is by the magnificent Wet Leg, and it is Chaise Long. Much as I love Your Mum and Wet Dream, Chaise Long is just so catchy. I've a number of different live versions of it I've watched on YouTube. Anytime it pops up, I have to watch it. I can't stop myself. Yeah, absolutely magnificent song from a strong contender for my album of the year, but it didn't quite get it. Quite unusually for me this year, I've explored quite a few new bands. I've got 3 albums that were nominated for a Mercury Prize, and all of them are debut albums, or a variant of which. Plus, you know, a couple of other acts that I've just explored on people's recommendations and what have you. Which, yes, is quite unusual for me. So I had quite a few contenders for album of the year, and this probably was second. But my album of the year is this masterpiece that I listened to again this morning. This is For All Our Days That Tear the Heart by Jessie Buckley and Bernard Butler. So Jessie Buckley, quite possibly maybe still best known for being one of the contestants. I think she was runner-up on How Do You Solve a Problem Like Maria, where they were looking for a Maria for The Sound of Music. But since then has become a much respected actress and singer. And Bernard Butler, obviously found fame with Suede, then went solo and done lots of solo work and collaborations. And this is the most recent of which. Just an absolutely beautiful album that as soon as I heard it, I loved, and I've listened to it a couple more times since, and as I say, including this morning, and it's just wonderful. Musically, it very much gives me a Joni Mitchell vibe. She's clearly a huge influence on this album. Jessie's voice at times does echo. Willow's coming in again. What are you doing? Jessie's voice at times does echo Joni's, but for most of the album, she doesn't particularly sound like her, apart from being a female vocalist, so having a fairly similar vocal range. But her voice is a bit more raspy. Certainly, if this sounded like later period Joni, then maybe there'd be a bit more of a similarity, but it more sounds like late 60s, early 70s Joni. Not entirely, there's some jazzy bits as well from later in Joni's career. But by comparing it to Joni, I'm not saying it's derivative. It is definitely very much its own thing, but it's just very much in the style of as well. You know, if you like Joni Mitchell's music, you will like this album, most certainly. So it's sort of folky, bit jazzy in parts. A couple of tracks got a slight pop edge to them, but yeah, it just sounds wonderful. Jessie's voice is awesome, and some really great songs. Absolutely love it. My album of the year for All Our Days at Tear the Heart by Jessie Buckley and Bernard Butler. Okay, my film of the year, moving away from music for a moment. To be fair, I think this is the only film released this year that I have actually seen. So in my head, it was sort of films I've watched for the first time this year. But as it is, this is my favourite film that I've seen this year. And it is the only film I've seen that was released this year. And it is The Batman. I'm a big Batman fan anyway. Love all the films to varying degrees, which will be a video one day. So I'm predisposed to enjoy a Batman film, but this was really, really good. What I want out of a Batman film, basically. Yeah, really enjoyed it. Just say Willow's in one of those moods. Then my last three categories are to do with live shows. I've seen 26 what I call cultural evenings this year. So that's theatre shows, plays, musicals, comedy gigs and music gigs. And I will give you my favourite from each of those categories. So my favourite music gig, my favourite comedy gig, and my favourite play or musical. Music gig wise, it's been quite a slim field for me. I've seen 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, I think, music gigs this year. Of which 6 are by one act, and another act I've seen twice. So the field has narrowed. So I've seen Will Young, I've seen Alicia Keys, I've seen The Pretty Reckless, I've seen 2 lottery winners gigs and 6 Divine Comedy gigs. Any other year, the 2 lottery winners gigs, particularly the first one, would be my winner. But, as many of you will know, I went to London in October, or end of September, beginning of October, to see Divine Comedy play their first 10 albums in full over 5 nights at the Barbican. And so without any hesitation, those are my gigs of the year. They were all special in their own way. The first night, which was the first 2 albums, Liberation and Promenade, were very special. were very special. Just hearing some of those songs live for the first time was fantastic, and hearing Promenade, one of my favourite albums ever, played in full from start to end, was very special. Night 2, which was Casanova, and a short album about love. Yeah, that's right. It was again very special because those were my first 2 Divine Comedy albums. They were ones that got me into the band. I'd heard most of the tracks performed live, but there were a few that I hadn't, and so it was great to hear them finally done. And a lot of his tracks I'd never heard done with an orchestra as well. He didn't have a full orchestra yet, but with strings and brass added to the normal band sound as well, added to it the joy. Night 3 was Fin de Siècle and Regeneration, which were the only 2 albums that I had heard every track done live previously, or seen them done live. But it was still great, particularly Regeneration, because only 1 or 2 of those tracks tend to get played live nowadays. Although the night was most memorable for the wrong reason, because the lady sat a couple along from me threw up during the show, and it splattered everywhere, and it was very unpleasant. But that aside, was another wonderful evening. Then night 4, which was Absent Friends and Victory for the Comic Muse, was nice because those are probably his most orchestral albums, apart from Short Album About Love. So to hear those done again with the added strings and brass added a lot to those albums, and again lots of songs I'd never seen or heard live before. And then we ended night 5 with Bang Goes the Knighthood and Foreverland. Bang Goes the Knighthood, I'd only heard a few of those songs, or seen him perform a few of those songs before. Foreverland I'd seen him do most of, but being the last night, it was a very celebratory night, and there was this air about the whole night that he'd done it, or they'd done it. So they're all special, but I think probably night 1 would probably be, if I had to narrow it down, the gig of the year for me. Just hearing Promenade done in full was amazing. Comedy gig of the year. So who have I seen this year? I've seen the Horn Section, I've seen Bill Bailey, I've seen Harry Hill, I've seen Stuart Lee, I've seen Dave Gorman. I think that was everybody. Of those, Bill Bailey I see on every tour. Dave Gorman we see on every tour. Stuart Lee I've seen the last couple of tours. Harry Hill I had seen live before, but only as part of a charity night, so it was only a shorter set. So it was great seeing him live. Oh, and I'm sorry I haven't a clue the live tour we saw as well, which I'll talk about in a second as well. So yeah, his was a strong contender for my favourite. I'm sorry I haven't a clue live. So, been to recordings of the show. I've been to their live touring show a number of times. This one was slightly different because it was the first one without any of the original crew. Obviously, Tim died in 2020. So he was no longer, Tim Brooke Taylor, so he was no longer available. Graham is semi-retired, so he didn't do the tour. Barry Cryer obviously died this year, so he was unable to do the tour because he was dead. So it was, a completely new panel. In fact, the last 2 times we saw the touring show, Jeremy Hardy was there, and he's obviously subsequently died as well. So Jack D hosted as normal, but then we had Rory Bremner, Marcus Brigstock. No, did we have Marcus? No, ignore that. I don't mean Marcus Brigstock. Miles Jupp is who I mean. Pippa Evans and Tony Hawks. I knew who it was. I just couldn't put a name to him. And of those, only Tony Hawks we'd ever seen do the show before. And it was very enjoyable and great evening. They do, although elements of it are changed up every night, there are some bits that appear every night and have been on all the tours. So there were elements I could sort of speak along to. But the highlight of the night was I went with my mum and my mum's boyfriend Dave, and we were sat in the front row, and it's a round called Swanee Kazoo, where they play a song on Swanee whistle and kazoo, and then they followed that up. Everybody in the audience had been given a kazoo, and we had to play the songs for the team members to guess. And first of all, they do everybody, then they do just upstairs, then they do just downstairs. Then it's everybody with an orange kazoo, everybody with, because they're all different colours. And eventually it was anybody with a blue kazoo. And me, Mum and Dave were the only 3 people in the audience with a blue kazoo. So this spotlight fell on us, and we had to perform Bohemian Rhapsody on the kazoo, just for 3 of us in the auditorium. Which they guessed, which was pleasing. So yes, that was fun being part of the show for the first time. But no, that's not my favourite. My favourite is, if you could have worked through deduction, the horn section. Big fan of theirs anyway, particularly of Alex Horn. But it was just such a fun, bonkers evening. The show started and Alex came in right at the back of the auditorium at Portsmouth Guildhall, and he just sort of sat in the back row and was directing things on stage for a while. But then he went up on stage and they did lots of their silly songs and a bit of audience participation. They did a mini Taskmaster with a couple of members of the audience. And it was just, yeah, an absolutely bonkers, hilarious evening with some really great, catchy, fun, silly songs. And I really, really enjoyed it. So that was my comedy gig of the year. And then plays and musicals. I'll probably forget a few here. But some of the ones that sort of the also rans. Cluedo was very good, based on the film Clue. That was excellent, very funny. Grown Ups by Mischief Theatre, that was very good. Bugsy Malone was excellent. Professional touring production of that was really good. But my favourite of the year is The Book of Mormon. That was such a good show. It went straight into my probably top 5 musicals. Really funny, really good music, great story. If you're not familiar, it's about Mormons travelling to deepest, darkest Africa to try and convert people. But it's written by the guys who write South Park, Trey and Matt, and Parker and Stone, but I can't remember which way round it is. Trey Parker and Matt Stone, I think. And it has that same sort of irreverent humour. You know, there's lots of bad language and sex jokes and all of that sort of stuff in there. But it's just a really, really great show. So my favourite play-stroke musical of the year was The Book of Mormon. Okay, that's it. I was thinking of doing a TV show, but I couldn't really think of a particular TV show. That was my absolute favourite of the year. Probably Taskmaster, because it's probably my favourite programme at the moment. Doctor Who, obviously, is a big love of mine. We only had the specials this year, of which it was 2.5 ones, and then the ending of Power of Daleks was wonderful. So if it, the Power of the Doctor rather, was wonderful. So that was great, but it didn't sustain enough for that to be my favourite. Inside Number 9 was, you know, as ever, at times some of the best TV, but at times still very good, but not quite as good. But the show, you know, that does never cease to make me enjoy myself is Taskmaster. So, if, yeah, thinking about it, my TV show of the year is almost certainly Taskmaster. But yes, that really is it. I hope you found that interesting. Let me know your favourite gigs you've been to, your favourite album, anything like that, anything in response to what I've said. Feel free to pop in the comments. This is my last video of the year. Probably my final haul for December will be a few days into the new year. As I record this, I'm recording this on the 28th. I'm not quite sure. I'm off on the 2nd of January, so it'll probably be recorded then and excuse me, hopefully uploaded on the 2nd, but it might be a day or two later. depending on life. But it almost certainly won't be up on the 1st. But that said, I think 90% of it I've already shown over the month anyway. But yeah, let me take this opportunity to wish you all a happy new year. Thank you for all your support. Thank you for watching. Thank you for all the comments, or as I said in the Christmas video, 99% of the comments. Taking the time to watch my videos. I hope I've provided some entertainment in your lives. Yeah, I think that's about all I want to say. I'll see you next year. Thanks for watching. Like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in another video. Thanks. Bye.